Caleb Reed stood in the driveway of his childhood home at 3 in the morning, his 5-year-old son asleep against his shoulder, and wondered if coming back here was the biggest mistake of his life. The house looked worse than he remembered. Sagging porch, peeling paint, windows dark and accusing. Behind him, his truck held everything they owned. In his pocket, he had $800 and a dishonorable discharge that made every job application feel like a confession. He'd survived combat zones, but standing here in the quiet dark of the town he'd run from at 18, Caleb felt more afraid than he ever had overseas. This was supposed to be a fresh start. Instead, it felt like facing every failure he'd ever tried to outrun. If you've ever had to start over from nothing, stick with me through this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey reaches. You won't regret it. The front door stuck when Caleb tried to open it, swollen from years of humidity and neglect. He had to put Noah down gently on the porch and throw his shoulder against the wood twice before it gave way with a groan that sounded like the house itself was protesting their arrival. Inside, the air was stale and thick. Dust hung in the beam of his flashlight like suspended judgment. The furniture was still there. His grandmother's couch, the dining table where he'd eaten 1,000 meals he'd taken for granted, the rocking chair his grandfather had built by hand. Everything was covered in sheets that had once been white, but were now the color of old newspaper. "Daddy?" Noah's voice was small behind him. "Is this our new house?" Caleb turned, and even in the dark he could see his son's uncertainty. Noah had his mother's eyes, clear and searching, and sometimes Caleb had to look away from them because they reminded him too much of everything he'd lost. "Yeah, buddy," he said, forcing brightness into his voice. "This is it. It needs some work, but it's ours." Noah stepped inside cautiously, his small sneakers leaving prints in the dust. "It smells funny. That's just because it's been closed up for a while. We'll get some windows open tomorrow, air it out. You'll see, it'll be great." The lie tasted bitter, but Caleb told it anyway because that's what fathers did. They lied about being afraid. They pretended everything would be okay, even when they had no idea how to make that true. He found Noah's sleeping bag in the truck and set it up in what used to be the guest room. The mattress was ancient, but still firm enough, and he'd bought clean sheets at a truck stop 3 states back. Noah was asleep before Caleb finished tucking him in, exhausted from 2 days of driving and the kind of deep uncertainty that wore on children in ways they couldn't name. Caleb stood in the doorway watching his son sleep, and the weight of everything pressed down on him so hard he had to put his hand against the doorframe to stay upright. 30 years old, single father, no job, no plan beyond getting here. The house needed thousands of dollars in repairs he didn't have. His phone had 43 unread messages from his ex-wife's lawyer about custody arrangements and child support he couldn't pay. He'd thought coming home would feel like relief. Instead, it felt like admitting defeat. The couch was too dusty to sleep on, so Caleb spread his sleeping bag on the living room floor and lay there in the dark, listening to the house settle around him. Every creak was a reminder of work that needed doing. Every draft through the old windows was money he'd have to spend on heating come winter. Every shadow seemed to whisper the same question: what made you think you could handle this? He must have dozed off eventually because the next thing he knew, sunlight was streaming through the uncovered windows and Noah was standing over him, already dressed in yesterday's clothes. "I'm hungry," Noah announced. Caleb sat up, his back protesting from the hard floor. "Yeah, okay. Let me find the cooler." They ate cereal with shelf-stable milk at the kitchen table, neither of them speaking much. Through the window, Caleb could see the neighborhood waking up. The houses here were old but maintained, fresh paint, mowed lawns, the kind of steady care that came from people who'd never left, who'd never had to learn how to start over. "Can I go outside?" Noah asked, swinging his legs under the table. "Not yet, buddy. We need to unpack first, get settled. Maybe this afternoon." Noah's face fell, but he didn't argue. He'd learned not to over the past year. That quiet acceptance was somehow worse than if he'd thrown a tantrum. They spent the morning hauling boxes inside, most of them light because they didn't own much. Caleb had sold or given away nearly everything when he'd left his last base. Clean break, he'd told himself. Fresh start. Now he wondered if he'd just been running again, the way he always had. By noon, the house looked somehow worse with their belongings scattered around. The contrast between their few possessions and all this empty space made their circumstances feel even more desperate. Caleb was sitting on the porch steps, trying to make a list of priorities and getting overwhelmed by how long it was, when a woman crossed the street carrying a casserole dish. She was about his age, maybe a year or two younger, with dark hair pulled back and the kind of comfortable confidence that came from knowing exactly who you were. She wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, and she moved like someone who wasn't trying to impress anyone. "You're Caleb Reed," she said, stopping at the bottom of his steps. It wasn't a question. He stood up, automatically defensive. "Yeah? I'm Maya Collins. I live across the street." She nodded toward a well-maintained blue house with white trim. "My mom and your grandmother were friends. I remember when you left for the service." Caleb shifted his weight, uncomfortable with being remembered. That was a long time ago. 12 years. She held out the casserole dish. "I made too much lasagna. Thought you might be able to use it." He took it automatically, the warmth of it surprising in his hands. "You didn't have to do that." "I know, but moving is exhausting, and I'm guessing you haven't had time to get groceries yet." She said it matter-of-factly, without pity, and somehow that made it easier to accept. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. "You have a son, right? I saw him through the window." "Noah, he's 5. Maya smiled, and it changed her whole face. "Good age. My daughter Emma just turned 6. They might get along." "Maybe." Caleb didn't want to make promises about playdates or neighborhood friendships. They might not be here long enough for any of that to matter. If Maya noticed his hesitation, she didn't comment on it. "Well, welcome back. If you need anything, I'm usually home in the evenings." She walked back across the street, and Caleb stood there holding the lasagna, feeling strangely off balance. People didn't just bring food to strangers. They didn't offer help without wanting something in return. At least, that had been his experience. But Maya had asked for nothing, expected nothing, and the kindness of it sat uncomfortably in his chest. The lasagna was good, better than good, and Noah actually ate without being prompted, which was rare enough to feel like a small miracle. Afterward, Caleb let him play in the backyard while he started cleaning the kitchen properly. The cabinets were sticky with old grease. The linoleum was cracked and peeling, and the sink drain was so clogged it barely drained at all. He was elbow deep in the sink trying to clear it with a plunger when he heard Noah talking to someone. He dried his hands and went to the back door, then stopped. Maya was at the fence line with a little girl, Emma, presumably, and the two kids were already deep in conversation about something involving a bug Noah had found. Maya caught Caleb's eye and waved casually, no presumption that she should come closer or be invited in. "Emma wanted to introduce herself," she called over. "Hope that's okay." "Sure," Caleb said, because what else could he say? And because watching Noah smile, really smile, the way he hadn't in months, was worth the discomfort of owing someone another kindness. The girls talked for maybe 10 minutes before Maya said they had to go help with dinner. Noah waved goodbye with genuine enthusiasm, and Caleb felt something shift in his chest. Maybe this place wouldn't be completely terrible. Maybe Noah could have some kind of normal childhood here, even if everything else was falling apart. That night, after Noah was asleep, Caleb sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and tried to make a real plan. He needed work, something that paid enough to cover basic expenses and didn't require explaining the circumstances of his discharge. He needed to fix the house enough to make it livable. He needed to figure out custody arrangements before his ex-wife's lawyer filed something he couldn't fight. The list was overwhelming, each item spawning 3 more problems he hadn't considered. He was still sitting there at midnight when his phone rang. His ex-wife. He almost didn't answer. "Caleb?" Her voice was tight, controlled. "We need to talk about the support payments." "I know. I'm working on it." "You're 3 months behind. My lawyer is talking about filing for full custody." "Jennifer, I just got here. I need time to get settled, find work." "You've had time. You've had months. I've been patient, but I have bills too. Emma needs things." "Emma?" For a second he was confused, then realized she was talking about their daughter who he hadn't seen in 2 years, who lived with Jennifer and her new husband in California, who probably barely remembered him. "How is she?" "She's fine. She asks about you sometimes." The words hit harder than they should have. Sometimes. Not often. Just sometimes. "I'll send what I can," he said, "as soon as I find work." That's what you said last month, and the month before. She sighed, and he heard her exhaustion. I'm not trying to punish you, Caleb, but I can't keep covering for you. If you can't be consistent, then maybe she's better off with stability. She's my daughter. Then act like her father. She hung up, and Caleb sat there in the dark kitchen of his grandmother's house, the phone still pressed to his ear, and felt the full weight of how badly he'd failed. Not just Jennifer, not just Emma, but Noah too, who deserved better than a father who could barely hold it together. He went to bed angry, at himself, at the world, at the choices that had led here, and woke up to Noah standing beside the couch at dawn. Daddy, can we explore today? Caleb's whole body ached from another night on the floor, and his head was pounding from lack of sleep, but he looked at his son's hopeful face and couldn't say no. Yeah, buddy, let's go see what this town has to offer. They walked downtown, which was only 6 blocks away. The main street had the kind of small-town charm that looked perfect in photos, but felt suffocating when you actually had to live there. The same diner where Caleb had eaten breakfast before school. The same hardware store his grandfather had spent hours in every Saturday. The same park where he'd learned to ride a bike and had his first kiss, and decided at 16 that he had to get out of here before this place swallowed him whole. Now he was back, and it felt less like coming home than like admitting he'd been wrong about everything. They got pancakes at the diner, and Caleb tried not to wince at the price. The waitress was someone he vaguely remembered from high school. Sharon? Shannon? And she made polite small talk about his grandmother, while her eyes kept darting to Noah with poorly concealed curiosity. Small towns loved gossip, and Caleb knew his return was probably the most interesting thing to happen here in months. After breakfast, they walked to the park. It had been updated since Caleb's childhood. New playground equipment, fresh mulch, benches that weren't covered in graffiti. Noah ran toward the swings, and Caleb sat down on a bench, trying to figure out his next move. Your son has good energy. He looked up. Maya was there again, pushing Emma on the swings while Noah waited his turn. She seemed to appear whenever Caleb was at his lowest, which was either coincidence or the universe had a terrible sense of humor. Yeah, he does. How's the house coming? Slowly. He didn't see the point in lying. She lived across the street. She could see exactly how much work it needed. Maya pushed Emma higher, then let the swing's momentum carry her before pushing again. My dad's pretty handy. He helped me with some repairs last year. I could ask if he'd be willing to take a look, give you an assessment of what needs doing first. I can't afford to hire anyone. I didn't say anything about hiring. I said he'd give you an assessment. She glanced at him. Not everything requires payment, Caleb. Sometimes people just help because it's the right thing to do. He wanted to argue, to insist he didn't need charity, but the truth was he had no idea what he was doing. His expertise was logistics and operations, not construction. If her father was willing to help, pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. That would be, helpful. Thank you. I'll ask him tonight. She called to Emma that it was time to go, and the little girl ran over, Noah trailing behind her. Can Noah come to our house? Emma asked. Please, we can play in the yard. Maya looked at Caleb, letting him make the call. He saw Noah's eager expression, the first real excitement he'd shown since they'd arrived, and found himself nodding. If it's not an imposition. It's not, Maya said firmly. Come on, all of you. I just made lemonade. Her house was everything Caleb's wasn't, warm, lived in, maintained with obvious care. The furniture was comfortable without being expensive. The walls were painted in soft colors that made the rooms feel larger, and there were photographs everywhere. Emma as a baby. Emma and Maya at the beach. Emma's artwork hung with magnets on the refrigerator. It felt like a home, not just a house, and the difference made Caleb's chest tight. The kids ran off to play while Maya poured lemonade in the kitchen. Caleb stood awkwardly near the doorway, unsure where he fit in this kind of domestic normalcy. You can sit down, Maya said, amusement in her voice. I don't bite. He sat at the kitchen table, accepting the glass she handed him. You've been really kind. I appreciate it. But you're waiting for the catch. She said it gently, without accusation. People usually want something. Some people, she corrected. Not all. She sat across from him, her own lemonade in hand. My ex-husband was like that. Everything was transactional. Every kindness had a price tag, even if it wasn't obvious right away. Sorry. Don't be. I'm better off without him. She took a sip. The point is, I understand suspicion, but I promise I'm just trying to be a good neighbor. This town can be, a lot. Having someone who understands what it's like to not quite fit can make the difference. You don't fit? She laughed. I'm a single mother who left her husband and works from home as a freelance designer. In this town, that's practically scandalous. Most people are polite about it, but there's always judgment underneath. Caleb found himself relaxing slightly. I'm a veteran with a dishonorable discharge, no job, and a house that's falling apart. I think I've got you beat on the scandal scale. It's not a competition. But she was smiling. Though, if it was, you'd probably win. They talked for an hour, maybe more, while the kids played outside. Maya asked about his plans without making it feel like an interrogation. She mentioned job openings she'd heard about. Nothing glamorous, but steady work. She talked about the town's quirks and which neighbors to avoid and where the best grocery deals were. Information that should have felt mundane, but was actually incredibly useful. When Caleb finally said they should go, Noah protested loudly. Can we come back? He asked Maya directly, with the kind of unself-conscious hope that children had before life taught them to guard themselves. Anytime, Maya said, and she looked at Caleb when she said it, making it clear the invitation extended to both of them. Walking back across the street, Noah wouldn't stop talking about Emma and her toys and the swing set in her backyard. Caleb listened with half his attention, the other half stuck on how easy it had been to sit in Maya's kitchen, to talk without having to explain or defend or justify every choice he'd made. That night, he made actual progress on unpacking. He set up Noah's room properly, hung some of his grandmother's pictures back on the walls, and started a load of laundry in the ancient washing machine that sounded like it might explode but somehow didn't. Small victories, but victories nonetheless. He was carrying a box of books upstairs when he heard a knock at the door. Maya's father stood on the porch, a man in his 60s with weathered hands and the kind of solid presence that came from a lifetime of knowing how to fix things. Jim Collins, he introduced himself. Maya said you might need some help assessing the place. Caleb invited him in, and for the next 2 hours, Jim walked through every room, making notes, pointing out problems Caleb hadn't even noticed. The wiring was outdated and potentially dangerous. The roof had at least 3 years left but would need replacing eventually. The plumbing was a patchwork of repairs that needed to be redone properly. The foundation was solid, though, and the bones of the house were good. It's overwhelming, Jim said, sitting at the kitchen table with his notes spread out. But it's doable. You prioritize the safety stuff first, wiring, that loose railing on the stairs, the carbon monoxide detector that should have been installed years ago. Then you work on function, getting the plumbing reliable, the heating system serviced before winter. Cosmetic stuff can wait. I appreciate the assessment, Caleb said, but I should tell you up front, I can't afford to hire anyone. I'll have to do most of this myself. I figured. Jim didn't seem bothered. Tell you what, I'm retired, get bored sitting around. How about I help with the technical stuff? Teach you as we go. You supply the materials, I supply the knowledge. Fair trade? Why would you do that? Because Maya asked me to. And because I remember your grandfather, he helped me fix my furnace one winter when I was out of work and couldn't afford a repairman. Told me to pay it forward someday. Jim stood up, gathering his notes. Consider this paying it forward. Caleb didn't know what to say. The kindness kept coming, kept pushing against his defenses, and he didn't know how to accept it without feeling like he was taking advantage. Thank you, he managed finally. Really, thank you. Don't thank me yet. Wait until you see how much work this is going to be. But Jim was smiling. I'll come by Tuesday morning. We'll start with the wiring in the kitchen. That's the most dangerous issue. After he left, Caleb stood in the kitchen and looked around at the peeling wallpaper, the cracked linoleum, the cabinets that didn't close properly. Everything was broken. Everything needed fixing. But for the first time since he'd arrived, it felt possible. The next few days developed a rhythm. Caleb would wake up early, get Noah breakfast, then work on the house while Noah played in the backyard or, increasingly, at Maya's house with Emma. Jim came by every Tuesday and Thursday, teaching Caleb how to rewire outlets, how to properly seal windows, how to identify which repairs were urgent and which could wait. Maya appeared with food more often than seemed reasonable: leftover soup, fresh bread, cookies that were supposedly extras from baking with Emma. Caleb knew what she was doing, knew she was making sure they ate properly, but he was too grateful to call her on it. "You don't have to keep feeding us," he said one evening when she dropped off a container of beef stew. "I know I don't have to. I want to." She met his eyes directly. "You're drowning, Caleb. Let someone throw you a rope." He almost argued, but she was right. He was drowning, in repairs and bills, in the constant pressure of trying to hold everything together for Noah, while barely keeping his own head above water. "Okay," he said quietly. "Thank you." She smiled. Progress. 2 weeks after arriving, Caleb got a call about one of the jobs Maya had mentioned: warehouse work at a distribution center 30 minutes away. The pay wasn't great, but it was steady, and they were willing to work around his schedule since he needed to be available for Noah before and after school. He started the following Monday, and the routine gave structure to his days. Up at 5, quick workout, shower, wake Noah at 6:30. Breakfast together, then drop Noah at Maya's before the early shift. Work until 2, pick Noah up, spend the afternoon doing house repairs or homework or just being present. Dinner, bath time, bedtime stories. Then a few hours working on the house before collapsing into bed. It was exhausting, but it was also the most stable he'd felt in years. The paychecks started coming. He made his first child support payment, then his second. He fixed the wiring in the kitchen, then the bathroom. He and Jim replaced the broken boards on the porch. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the house started to feel less like a burden and more like a project. Noah thrived. He made friends at his new school, came home with artwork and stories about his teacher, stopped flinching when Caleb raised his voice. The tight, anxious child who'd arrived here in the middle of the night started to relax, to laugh freely, to trust that this place might actually be home. And Caleb started to breathe again. He still had moments of panic. When a bill came that he couldn't quite cover. When Noah woke up with nightmares. When his ex-wife called with new demands. But they were moments. Not the constant state of emergency he'd been living in. He had help. He had Maya and Jim, who showed up without being asked. He had neighbors who waved when they drove past, who included Noah in block parties, who slowly stopped looking at him like he was a problem and started treating him like he belonged. 6 weeks in, Caleb was replacing the front door when Maya walked over with 2 cups of coffee. "Peace offering," she said, handing him one. "I saw you struggling with that hinge from my window." "It's warped. Stupid thing won't sit right." She set her coffee down and looked at the door, then at the frame. "The frame's out of square. That's why it won't hang properly. You need to shim it before you attach the hinges." He stared at her. "How do you know that?" "I had to replace my back door last year. Watched about 6 hours of YouTube videos to figure it out." She picked up a wood shim from his toolbox. "Here, let me show you." They worked together for the next hour, and Caleb found himself noticing things he'd been trying not to notice. The way she concentrated when she was focused on something. The small scar on her left hand. How she laughed when the door finally hung properly, genuine and unguarded. "You're good at this," he said. "Out of necessity. Being a single parent means learning to do everything yourself." "Where's Emma's father?" "California. He sends child support when he remembers. Sees her maybe once a year. He wasn't interested in the reality of being a parent, just the idea of it." She said it matter-of-factly, without bitterness. "I'm better off handling it alone than constantly being disappointed." Caleb understood that. "My ex says the same thing about me." "Is she right?" The question was direct but not unkind. "Probably. I wasn't ready to be a father the first time, or the second, honestly. I'm still figuring it out." "At least you're trying. That's more than some people do." They stood there on his porch, tools scattered around them, the new door hanging straight for the first time in probably 20 years. Something shifted between them, subtle but undeniable. An understanding. A recognition of shared struggle. "I should get back," Maya said eventually. "Emma will be home from her friend's house soon." "Yeah, thanks for the help and the coffee." "Any time." He watched her walk back across the street, And for the first time since arriving, Caleb let himself think about something beyond just survival. Let himself imagine what it might be like to build something here, not just a repaired house, but an actual life. That night, Noah asked if Emma and Maya could come to dinner. "We could make spaghetti," Noah suggested. "Emma likes spaghetti." "How do you know what Emma likes?" "She told me. We talk about everything." Caleb smiled at his son's earnestness. "Okay, I'll ask Maya if they want to come over this weekend." Noah's face lit up with pure joy, and Caleb felt something in his chest unclench. This was what mattered. Not the perfect job or the perfectly restored house or the redemption he wasn't sure he deserved. Just this, his son happy, safe, excited about something as simple as having friends over for dinner. Maya said yes to the invitation, and Saturday night, Caleb cooked his one reliable meal while Noah set the table with intense concentration. Maya brought salad and bread, and Emma brought a drawing she'd made of the four of them as stick figures. "That's you," she explained to Caleb, pointing at a tall stick figure. "And that's Noah. And that's my mom. And that's me. We're all friends." "It's perfect," he said, and meant it. Dinner was chaotic. Noah and Emma couldn't stop talking, interrupting each other and laughing at their own jokes. Maya told stories about her design work, and Caleb found himself talking about the job at the warehouse, about his plans for the house, about things he usually kept to himself. After the kids ran off to play, he and Maya cleaned up together in comfortable silence. "This was nice," she said, drying a plate. "Thank you for inviting us." "Thank you for saying yes." He handed her another plate. "And for everything else. The food, your dad's help, watching Noah. I know I keep saying it, but I really am grateful. You don't have to rebuild this alone, you know." She said it quietly, her eyes on the dish in her hands. "Whatever you're carrying, whatever you're running from, you don't have to do it alone." The words hit him harder than they should have. He'd spent so long believing he had to handle everything himself that asking for help was weakness, that showing vulnerability was failure. But standing in his grandmother's kitchen with Maya beside him, Caleb felt something crack open in his chest. "I'm scared," he admitted. "I'm scared I'm going to mess this up, that I'm not enough for Noah, that I'm going to fail again, that everything I touch turns to—" "Stop." She turned to face him fully. "You're here. You're trying. You're doing the work, showing up every day, fighting for your son. That's not failing, Caleb. That's the opposite of failing." He wanted to believe her. He wanted to believe that effort mattered more than outcome, that trying was enough. But years of disappointment had taught him otherwise. Still, looking at Maya in the soft kitchen light, seeing the certainty in her eyes, he let himself hope. Just a little, just enough to keep going. "Okay," he said. "Okay." She smiled, and it felt like permission to believe things might actually get better. They finished the dishes, called the kids in for dessert, and spent the rest of the evening playing board games that Emma kept changing the rules to. It was normal. It was simple. It was everything Caleb had forgotten life could be. After Maya and Emma left, Noah climbed into bed and looked up at his father with serious eyes. "Daddy, are we going to stay here? Forever?" Caleb sat on the edge of the bed, brushing Noah's hair back from his forehead. "Would you want to?" "Yeah, I like it here. I like Emma and Miss Maya and our house, even though it's kind of broken. It's getting better though, right?" "Yeah. You're fixing it." Noah yawned. "You're good at fixing things." After Noah fell asleep, Caleb sat on the newly repaired porch and looked at the house across the street. Maya's lights were still on, and he could see her shadow moving past the window. 2 months ago, he'd arrived here convinced he'd made a terrible mistake. Now, he couldn't imagine being anywhere else. The house was still broken in 100 ways. His bank account was still frighteningly small. His past was still complicated, his future uncertain. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, Caleb Reed felt something that might have been hope. And that, he was learning, was enough to build on. The rhythm they'd found lasted exactly 3 weeks before reality reminded Caleb that nothing good came without a fight. He was at the warehouse loading pallets when his supervisor called him into the office. Derek was a decent guy, former military himself, which was probably the only reason Caleb had gotten the job in the first place. But the expression on his face now wasn't friendly. "Sit down, Reed." Caleb sat, his stomach already tightening. "Something wrong?" "Got a call this morning from corporate. They're doing background checks on all employees hired in the last 6 months. Standard procedure, apparently, though nobody told me about it beforehand. Derek leaned back in his chair. Want to tell me about that discharge? The room felt smaller suddenly. It's complicated. It always is. But corporate doesn't do complicated. They see dishonorable discharge. They see liability. Derek rubbed his face tiredly. I went to bat for you, told them you've been reliable, shown up on time every day, good worker, bought you 2 weeks. After that, they want you gone unless you can provide documentation that the discharge was overturned or amended. It wasn't overturned. It won't be. Then I'm sorry, Caleb, I really am. You've got until the end of the month. Caleb drove home in a fog, barely seeing the road. 2 weeks. He had 2 weeks to find another job, and this time he wouldn't have Derek vouching for him. The discharge would follow him everywhere. A scarlet letter that said failure, unreliable, not worth the risk. Noah was at Maya's when he got back, which was good because Caleb needed time to pull himself together before facing his son. He sat in the truck in the driveway, gripping the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the panic. A knock on the window made him jump. Maya stood there, concern written across her face. He rolled down the window. Hey, you've been sitting here for 20 minutes. Noah's getting worried. Had it been 20 minutes? It felt like seconds and hours at the same time. Sorry, it just needed a minute. Caleb, she opened the door. Come inside. Whatever it is, sitting in your truck isn't going to fix it. He followed her across the street because he didn't know what else to do. Noah and Emma were playing in the living room, and Noah looked up with immediate worry. Daddy, are you sick? No, buddy, just tired. Keep playing, okay? Maya led him to the kitchen and poured 2 glasses of water, setting one in front of him. Talk. So he did. He told her about the background check, about the 2 weeks, about how he'd finally started to believe things might work out, only to have it all yanked away again. The words came out flat, defeated, because he was so tired of fighting. Maya listened without interrupting, and when he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. What happened? She asked finally. With the discharge. Caleb stared at his water glass. He told this story exactly twice, once to his lawyer, once to his ex-wife. Both times had ended badly. I reported my commanding officer for ordering us to falsify maintenance records. Equipment was failing, people were getting hurt, but fixing it properly would have blown the budget and made him look bad. So he ordered us to sign off on inspections that never happened, maintenance that was never done. Caleb's jaw tightened. I went over his head, filed a formal complaint, thought I was doing the right thing. Let me guess, it backfired. Spectacularly. Turned out the falsified records went higher than just my CO. I'd stumbled into something bigger, and suddenly I was the problem. They offered me a choice: withdraw the complaint and take an honorable discharge, or face court-martial for insubordination. He laughed bitterly. I was young and stupid and believed the truth mattered. I refused to withdraw. So they buried me. That's not a dishonorable discharge. That's retaliation. Tell that to every employer who sees my record and assumes I'm a screw-up who couldn't hack it. Maya was quiet again, but her expression had shifted from sympathy to something harder, more thoughtful. There are lawyers who specialize in military discharge appeals. Have you looked into it? Can't afford a lawyer? Some work pro bono, or on contingency. She pulled out her phone. My cousin's husband is a veterans advocate. Let me reach out, see if he knows anyone. Maya, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. She met his eyes. You did the right thing, Caleb. You shouldn't spend the rest of your life being punished for it. He wanted to believe her, but hope felt dangerous. Every time he'd let himself hope, it had ended in disappointment. Still, when she texted her cousin right there at the kitchen table, he didn't stop her. That night, after Noah was asleep, Caleb sat at his own kitchen table with a beer and his laptop, searching for jobs that wouldn't require a background check. The options were grim: day labor, under-the-table construction work, nothing stable or reliable, nothing that would let him keep the life he'd started building here. His phone rang. An unknown number. This is Caleb. Mr. Reed, my name is David Martinez. I'm an attorney specializing in military discharge cases. Maya Collins reached out through her family, said you might need some help. Caleb's grip tightened on the phone. I can't afford legal fees. Let's start with a free consultation. Tell me about your case. For the second time that day, Caleb explained what had happened. Martinez asked detailed questions, dates, names, specific incidents. He took notes, asked for documentation Caleb wasn't sure he still had, and finally sighed. This is messy, but it's not hopeless. The fact that you filed a formal complaint and were then discharged is suggestive of retaliation. If we can prove the falsified records existed and that your complaint was legitimate, we might have grounds for appeal. Might? I won't lie to you. These cases are difficult. The military doesn't like admitting mistakes. But you've got a few things in your favor. Time has passed, some of the people involved have retired, and there's been increased scrutiny on retaliation cases in recent years. Martinez paused. I can't promise results, but I'm willing to take this on pro bono if you're willing to fight. Caleb closed his eyes. Why would you do that? Because I'm a veteran too, and I've seen good people destroyed by bad leadership. You tried to do the right thing. You deserve a chance to clear your name. They talked for another 30 minutes, Martinez explaining what he'd need, what the process would look like, how long it might take. When Caleb finally hung up, his hands were shaking. He walked across the street and knocked on Maya's door. She answered in pajamas, Emma already asleep upstairs. Martinez called, he said. And he's going to help, pro bono. Caleb's voice cracked. Why did you do this? She stepped out onto the porch, closing the door softly behind her. Because you're drowning, and I have a rope. We covered this already. But you barely know me. I know enough. She crossed her arms against the night chill. I know you're a good father. I know you're trying to build something real here. I know you did the right thing even when it cost you everything. That's enough. He didn't know what to say. The kindness kept coming, and he still didn't know how to accept it without feeling like he was taking advantage. Thank you, he managed finally. You're welcome. Now go home and get some sleep. Tomorrow we'll start gathering the documentation Martinez needs. The next 2 weeks were a blur of paperwork and memory. Caleb dug through boxes he hadn't opened in years, finding old emails, incident reports, copies of the complaints he'd filed. Maya helped him organize everything chronologically, creating a timeline that showed the progression from initial concerns to formal complaint to discharge. Jim stopped by one evening while they were working at Caleb's kitchen table, took in the scene, and quietly started making dinner. When it was ready, he called them to eat, not asking questions, just providing the kind of practical support that kept people functioning during crisis. You've got good people around you, Jim said, loading dishes into the sink. Don't forget that when things get hard. How do you know things are getting hard? Jim gave him a look that said he wasn't stupid. Because you've got that look my son had right before he deployed, like you're bracing for impact. Your son serve? 2 tours in Afghanistan. Came back different, took him years to settle. But he did settle, eventually. Built a good life for himself out in Colorado. Jim dried his hands on a towel. Point is, the hard part isn't always the combat. Sometimes it's coming home and figuring out who you are when nobody's shooting at you. Caleb felt those words settle in his chest. Yeah, that sounds about right. Give it time. You're doing better than you think you are. After Jim left, Maya looked at Caleb across the kitchen table covered in paperwork. He's right, you know. You are doing better. I'm about to lose my job and I'm dragging you into my mess. You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm choosing to be here. She gathered a stack of papers. And you haven't lost your job yet. Martinez said he'd expedite the initial filing, see if we can get a temporary hold on the discharge pending review. That's a long shot. So, long shots are still shots. You don't win by not trying. He wanted to argue, to list all the reasons this wouldn't work, but he was tired of his own pessimism. Okay, we try. Martinez filed the appeal 3 days before Caleb's termination date. The next morning, Caleb went to work expecting to be called into Derek's office and told to clear out his locker. Instead, Derek pulled him aside at lunch with an expression somewhere between confused and relieved. Corporate called, said to hold off on terminating you pending some legal review. You got a lawyer involved? Yeah, he's appealing the discharge. Derek whistled low. Gutsy move. Corporate doesn't like lawyers. But it bought you time, so don't waste it. I won't. That night, Caleb took Noah and Maya and Emma out for pizza to celebrate the reprieve. It wasn't a victory, just a delay, but after weeks of waiting for the other shoe to drop, even a delay felt like winning. Noah and Emma shared a strawberry milkshake, arguing cheerfully about whether strawberry or chocolate was superior. Maya caught Caleb's eye across the table and smiled. "This is nice," she said. "It is." He meant it. Sitting in a slightly sticky booth in a small-town pizza place with his son and the woman who'd become something more than a neighbor, but something he wasn't ready to name yet, this was what normal people did, what happy people did. "You deserve this," Maya said quietly, like she could read his thoughts. "You deserve to be happy, Caleb." He didn't know if that was true, but he was starting to want to believe it. The appeal process was slow. Weeks turned into a month, then 2. Martinez kept Caleb updated with emails full of legal language that basically meant still waiting. Meanwhile, life continued. Caleb kept working at the warehouse, each day feeling like borrowed time. He and Jim finished the major repairs on the house. New wiring, fixed plumbing, a roof that no longer leaked when it rained. The cosmetic work was still rough, but the place was structurally sound and actually safe for Noah to live in. Maya's presence in their lives shifted from occasional help to daily routine. She picked Noah up from school when Caleb's shift ran late. He fixed things around her house when they broke. They had dinner together more nights than not, the 4 of them falling into patterns that felt dangerously close to family. One Saturday afternoon, Caleb was replacing the last of the broken windows when Maya came over with a bottle of wine. "Celebration drink," she announced. "Emma's at a sleepover, Noah's building Legos in my living room, and you just installed that window perfectly on the first try. That deserves alcohol." He laughed, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's 4 in the afternoon. And? We're adults. We can day drink if we want to." They sat on his porch with plastic cups of wine, watching the neighborhood wind down into evening. A couple walked by with a dog. Someone was mowing their lawn 3 houses down. Normal Saturday sounds in a normal town. "Can I ask you something?" Maya said after a while. "Sure." "What happened with Noah's mother? You mentioned an ex-wife, but you never talk about her." Caleb took a drink, choosing his words carefully. "We were young and stupid. Got married because she was pregnant with our daughter, Emma, different Emma than your Emma. It was a disaster from the start. I was always deploying. She was alone with a baby. We fought constantly when I was home." He paused. "When I reported my CO and everything fell apart, she'd had enough. Divorced me, got full custody, remarried someone stable within a year." "And your daughter?" "Lives in California with Jennifer and her new husband. I haven't seen her in 2 years. Jennifer thinks it's less confusing for Emma if I'm not around." The words tasted bitter. "She's probably right." "That's horrible." "It's realistic. I wasn't a good father to Emma. I was never there, and when I was angry and stressed and not present. Jennifer gave her stability. I gave her chaos." Maya was quiet, and Caleb expected judgment. Instead, she said, "And Noah?" "Noah's mother died when he was 2, drug overdose. We weren't together. It was a one-night thing that resulted in a kid. She tried to raise him, but the addiction was too strong. When she died, social services found me. Suddenly, I was a single father to a toddler I barely knew. That must have been terrifying." "It was, still is most days. I keep waiting to screw it up the way I screwed up with Emma, but Noah doesn't have another option, so I have to figure it out." "You're doing more than figuring it out," Maya said firmly. "You're building him a life, a home. That matters." Caleb wanted to argue, but he was tired of arguing with kindness. "Thanks." They finished the wine as the sun set, talking about nothing important, favorite movies, worst jobs they'd ever had, places they wanted to travel. Easy conversation that felt like the beginning of something neither of them was ready to acknowledge out loud. When Maya went home to check on Noah, Caleb sat on his porch alone and let himself imagine what it might be like if this was permanent. If Maya was more than a helpful neighbor. If the 4 of them were actually a family instead of just 2 single parents helping each other survive. The thought scared him more than he wanted to admit. 3 months after filing the appeal, Martinez called with an update. "We've got movement. The review board has agreed to hear your case, which means they found enough merit to warrant further investigation. That's good news." When? Hearing is scheduled for 6 weeks from now. You'll need to testify, and we'll need witnesses who can corroborate your version of events. Most of the guys I served with won't talk. They're still active duty. Testifying for me could end their careers the same way it ended mine. I only need one. Someone credible who'll confirm the falsified records and your complaint. Caleb thought through the list of people who might actually help. It was shorter than he'd hoped. There's one guy, Jackson. We were close. He got out on an honorable discharge 3 years ago, civilian now. But I don't know if he'll be willing to testify. Find out. And Caleb, this is real. We have a legitimate shot at overturning the discharge. After hanging up, Caleb stood in his kitchen, phone still in his hand, trying to process the possibility that his life might actually change for the better. That he might get his name back, his reputation, the ability to move forward without dragging the past behind him like chains. He called Jackson. The phone rang 5 times before a familiar voice answered. "This is Jackson." "Jack, it's Caleb Reed." Silence. Then, "Holy hell! Caleb? Where are you? I heard you fell off the face of the earth after the discharge." "Small town in the Midwest, trying to rebuild." He paused. "I need your help." They talked for over an hour. Jackson remembered everything. The falsified records, the pressure from command, Caleb's complaints, the retaliation. He'd kept his head down, finished his contract, and gotten out clean. But he'd felt guilty about it ever since. "I should have backed you up," Jackson said. "I knew you were right, but I was scared. I'm sorry, man." "I don't blame you. You had a family to think about, but now I'm appealing the discharge, and I need someone who can testify about what actually happened." "When and where?" 6 weeks. I'll send you the details." "Jack, I can't pay you. Can't even cover travel." "Shut up. I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing it because it's 5 years too late, but it's the right thing to do. Send me the information." After they hung up, Caleb had to sit down because his legs felt weak. Jackson would testify. He had a witness. He had a real chance. Maya found him sitting on his kitchen floor 20 minutes later, his back against the cabinet, staring at nothing. "Caleb? Noah said you've been in here for a while. Are you okay?" "Jackson's going to testify." She slid down to sit next to him on the floor. "That's good, right?" "It's everything. Without him, the appeal was just my word against official records. With him, we have corroboration." He looked at her. "This might actually work." "Of course it might work. You told the truth. Truth matters." He wanted to believe that. Wanted to believe that doing the right thing would eventually lead to the right outcome. But he'd been burned too many times to trust it completely. Still, sitting on his kitchen floor with Maya beside him, her shoulder warm against his, Caleb let himself hope. The next 6 weeks passed in a strange, suspended state. Life continued normally, work, house repairs, time with Noah and Maya, but underneath it all was the constant awareness of the coming hearing. Martinez sent him prep materials, coached him on how to answer questions, warned him that the board would try to discredit him. "They'll bring up every mistake you ever made, every negative performance review, anything they can use to paint you as unreliable. You need to stay calm, stick to the facts, and remember that you have nothing to hide." Caleb wasn't sure about that last part. He'd made plenty of mistakes, lost his temper more than once, definitely wasn't a perfect soldier. But he'd told the truth about the records, and that was what mattered. The night before the hearing, Maya made dinner for all of them. Afterwards, she sent the kids to watch a movie while she and Caleb cleaned up. "You're going to do great tomorrow," she said, scrubbing a pot with more force than necessary. "You don't know that." "I do, actually, because you're honest, and you're prepared, and you have nothing to be ashamed of." He took the pot from her, set it in the sink, and turned her to face him. "Maya, if this goes badly, if they uphold the discharge, I don't know what happens next. I might lose the job for real this time. Might have to move somewhere cheaper, start over again. Then we'll figure it out." "We?" She met his eyes steadily. "Yes, we. You're not alone in this, Caleb. I thought we established that." He kissed her. It wasn't planned, wasn't smooth or romantic. It was desperate and grateful and full of every emotion he'd been holding back for months. She kissed him back, her hands fisting in his shirt, and for a moment everything else fell away. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya pressed her forehead to his. "Win or lose tomorrow, you're still you," she whispered. "Still a good father, still someone worth knowing. The discharge doesn't define you." "Feels like it does." "Then change how it feels. Fight for yourself the way you fight for Noah. You deserve that." The hearing was in a federal building 2 hours away. Martinez met Caleb outside, briefcase in hand and confidence in his expression. "Ready?" "No. But let's do it anyway." The review board consisted of 3 officers, all higher ranking than Caleb had ever been. They sat behind a long table, impassive and intimidating, while Caleb and Martinez sat across from them. Jackson was there too, ready to testify, and his presence steadied Caleb more than he'd expected. Martinez presented the case methodically. The timeline of events, the formal complaints, the evidence of falsified records that Jackson confirmed. Then it was Caleb's turn to testify. He told his story as clearly as he could, answering every question directly, not letting them bait him into anger or defensiveness. When they brought up his performance reviews, the times he'd clashed with superiors, he acknowledged his mistakes without backing down from the central truth. "I wasn't a perfect soldier," he said, "but I was an honest one. The records were falsified, equipment was failing, people were at risk. I reported it because it was the right thing to do, and I was punished for it. That's not justice." The questioning went on for hours. By the end, Caleb was exhausted, wrung out from reliving everything he'd tried to move past. But he'd told the truth, and Jackson had backed him up, and now all they could do was wait. Outside, Martinez clapped him on the shoulder. "You did good in there. Really good." The board seemed engaged, asked the right questions. "I think we have a real shot." "How long until they decide?" "Could be weeks, could be months. These things move slowly." Jackson pulled Caleb into a hug. "Whatever happens, man, you did the right thing, 5 years ago and today. I'm proud of you." After they left, Caleb sat in his truck in the parking lot, too drained to drive yet. His phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "How did it go?" He typed back, "Don't know yet, but I told the truth, that's all I could do." Her response came immediately. "That's everything. Come home. We're waiting for you." Home. The word settled in his chest with unexpected weight. 6 months ago, he'd arrived in that town feeling like a failure, convinced he was making a mistake. Now, driving back through familiar streets toward the house he'd rebuilt and the people who'd rebuilt him, Caleb Reed finally understood what home actually meant. It wasn't a place. It was the people who saw you at your worst and chose to stay anyway. Maya's porch light was on when Caleb pulled into his driveway just after 8. Through her front window, he could see Noah and Emma sprawled on the floor with coloring books, their heads bent together in concentration. The sight of his son safe and happy, and completely absorbed in something as simple as crayons, made Caleb's throat tight. He sat in the truck for a moment, letting the day drain out of him. The hearing had taken everything he had, every ounce of composure and control. Now he just felt hollow, scraped clean, uncertain whether he'd done enough. His phone buzzed again. "Maya, I can see you sitting in your truck. Come inside before the kids notice and start worrying." He smiled despite his exhaustion and crossed the street. Maya opened the door before he could knock, and the concern in her eyes was almost his undoing. "Hey," he said. "Hey yourself." She stepped aside to let him in. "You look terrible." "Feel worse." Noah looked up from his coloring and scrambled to his feet. "Daddy, did you win?" Caleb caught his son in a hug, breathing in the smell of crayons and the strawberry shampoo Maya used on both kids. "Don't know yet, buddy. They have to decide, and that takes time. But I told them the truth, and that's what matters. Mr. Martinez said the truth always wins." "He said that, did he?" Noah nodded seriously. "When he called to tell Miss Maya how it went, he said you were really brave." Caleb glanced at Maya over Noah's head. She shrugged, unapologetic. "He wanted to give me an update, said you handled yourself well, that the board seemed receptive." "Receptive doesn't mean anything." "It means something," she said firmly. "It means they listened. Now come eat something. You've been gone all day." She'd made pot roast, and the smell of it made Caleb realize he hadn't eaten since breakfast. They sat around her kitchen table, the 4 of them, and Emma chattered about her day at school while Noah added his own stories. Normal conversation, normal evening, the kind of ordinary that Caleb had learned to treasure because he'd spent so long without it. After dinner, Maya sent the kids back to their coloring while she and Caleb did the dishes. They worked in comfortable silence for a while before she spoke. "You kissed me last night." Caleb's hand stilled in the soapy water. "Yeah, I did." "We should probably talk about that." "Probably." He rinsed a plate, buying time. "I'm sorry if I overstepped. Everything was just so overwhelming, and you were there, and—" "Caleb." She took the plate from him and set it in the drainer. "I kissed you back. Pretty enthusiastically, if I remember correctly." "You did. So maybe the question isn't whether you overstepped, but what happens now?" He turned to face her, leaning against the counter. "I don't know. I'm a mess, Maya. My whole life is uncertain right now. I might lose my job, might have to move, might be fighting this discharge for years. You deserve better than getting tangled up in all that." "Don't tell me what I deserve," she said, and there was steel in her voice. "I'm a grown woman who can make her own decisions. If I didn't want to be here, I wouldn't be." "But why are you here? Why do you keep showing up for someone you barely know?" She was quiet for a moment, her fingers tracing patterns in the soap bubbles on the edge of the sink. "My ex-husband was charming, successful. On paper, he was everything I thought I wanted. But he was also controlling and dismissive, and he made me feel small every single day. When I finally left him, everyone said I was making a mistake, that I should try harder, compromise more, that marriage was about sacrifice." "Maya, let me finish." She looked at him directly. "I spent 2 years being told I was the problem, that I expected too much, that I should be grateful for what I had. And then I met you, and you know what I saw? Someone who's been beaten down by life but keeps getting back up. Someone who does the right thing even when it costs him everything. Someone who looks at his son like he hung the moon, who fixes things that are broken, who doesn't make excuses for his mistakes but actually tries to be better." "I'm not—" "You are," she interrupted. "And maybe you can't see it yet, but I can. So when you ask why I keep showing up, that's why. Because you're worth showing up for, Caleb Reed, even when you don't believe it yourself." He didn't know what to say to that. All the arguments he'd prepared, all the reasons why she should keep her distance, felt flimsy in the face of her conviction. "I don't want to hurt you," he said finally. "Then don't. But don't push me away because you're scared either. We're both adults. We can handle whatever this is or isn't or might become." "Okay," he said, and it felt like stepping off a cliff. "Okay." She smiled, and the tension between them shifted into something warmer. "Good. Now finish these dishes. The kids need baths, and you look like you're about to fall over." That night, lying in his own bed in his mostly repaired house, Caleb stared at the ceiling and let himself imagine a future that included more than just survival. A future with Maya in it, not as a neighbor who helped out sometimes, but as something more permanent. The thought terrified him, but it also felt right in a way nothing had felt right in years. The waiting was brutal. Days turned into weeks with no word from the review board. Martinez called every Friday with the same update. "Still processing. These things take time. Stay patient." Caleb tried to focus on work and being present for Noah, but the uncertainty gnawed at him. Derek pulled him aside one morning at the warehouse. "Corporate's getting antsy. They gave you an extension pending the appeal, but they want resolution. I can probably buy you another month, maybe 6 weeks, but after that my hands are tied." "I understand. Thanks for trying. For what it's worth, you're one of the best workers I've got. This whole situation is garbage." It was garbage, but Caleb was learning that life was full of situations that weren't fair and didn't make sense. All you could do was keep moving forward. Maya had become a constant in ways that both comforted and unnerved him. They had dinner together most nights, trading off cooking duties. She helped Noah with homework while Caleb finished repairs on the house. On weekends, they'd take the kids to the park or the library or just let them play in the backyard while the adults talked. They hadn't kissed again, hadn't defined what they were to each other, but the intimacy was there in smaller ways. Her hand on his shoulder when she passed behind his chair, the way he automatically poured her coffee the way she liked it, how they could sit in comfortable silence or talk for hours without running out of things to say. Jim noticed, of course. One Thursday afternoon, while they were replacing the old kitchen linoleum with something that didn't look like it belonged in a 1970s horror movie, he brought it up. "You and Maya seem close." Caleb concentrated on cutting the tile to size. "She's been really helpful." That's one word for it. Jim knelt down to help position the piece. "My daughter's happy. Happier than I've seen her since before the divorce. Thought you should know. We're just friends." "Sure you are. And I'm just a casual handyman." Jim sat back on his heels. "Look, I'm not trying to stick my nose where it doesn't belong, but I've watched you two dance around each other for months now. At some point, you're going to have to decide if you're brave enough to actually go for it. I don't want to mess up what we have. Noah and Emma are friends. Maya's been incredible with everything. If I push for more and it doesn't work out, I lose all of that." "Or," Jim countered, "you gain something even better, but you won't know unless you try." Caleb wanted to argue, but Jim had a point. Fear of losing what they had was keeping him from reaching for what they could have. The question was whether he was ready to take that risk. 3 weeks after the hearing, Caleb's ex-wife called. "I need to talk to you about Emma." He braced himself for another lecture about child support or missed visitation. "What about her?" "She wants to see you. She's been asking about you more lately, and my therapist thinks it might be good for her to have some contact." Jennifer sounded uncomfortable, like the words were being dragged out of her. "I'm not saying you can just swoop back into her life, but maybe we could arrange a video call, see how it goes." Caleb's heart was pounding. "When? This Saturday? Around 2 your time?" "Yes, absolutely yes." After they hung up, he sat there trying to process the fact that he was going to talk to his daughter for the first time in 2 years. Emma would be 7 now, probably looked completely different from the 5-year-old he remembered. Would she even remember him? Want to talk to him? Maya found him pacing in his backyard an hour later. "Noah said you seemed upset. What happened?" He told her about the call, about the upcoming video chat, about how he was simultaneously elated and terrified. What if she doesn't remember me? Or worse, what if she does remember and she's angry that I haven't been around? "Then you apologize and you show up and you keep showing up," Maya said. "Kids are resilient, Caleb. They understand more than we give them credit for. She wants to talk to you. That's what matters." Saturday came too fast and not fast enough. Caleb set up his laptop at the kitchen table, checked the connection 3 times, and tried to calm his racing heart. Noah was at Maya's, giving him privacy for the call. At exactly 2 o'clock, the call connected. Jennifer's face appeared first, then she moved aside and there was Emma. She was taller, her face had lost some of its baby roundness, and her hair was longer, but she had his eyes, and when she smiled tentatively at the screen, Caleb felt something crack open in his chest. "Hi, Emma." "Hi, Daddy." Her voice was shy, uncertain. They talked for 30 minutes. Caleb asked about school, her friends, what she liked to do. Emma told him about soccer and her new kitten and a book she was reading. The conversation was stilted at first, both of them feeling their way through unfamiliar territory, but gradually it got easier. "Do you have a house now?" Emma asked. "I do. It's my grandmother's old house. I've been fixing it up." "Is it nice?" "It's getting there. You'd like it. There's a big backyard." "Can I see it sometime?" Caleb glanced at Jennifer, who was standing just off camera. She nodded slightly. "Maybe. We'll have to see. But I'd really like that." When the call ended, Caleb sat at the table for a long time, staring at the blank screen. His daughter wanted to see him, wanted to know about his life. It wasn't forgiveness, wasn't a relationship rebuilt, but it was a door opening. A chance. Maya came over that evening after putting Emma to bed, letting herself in through the back door the way she'd started doing. "How did it go?" "Better than I expected. She actually talked to me, wanted to know about the house and everything." "Of course she did. She's your daughter." He pulled Maya into a hug, needing the contact, the reassurance that this good thing was real. She wrapped her arms around him and just held on, and they stood in his kitchen like that for several minutes, neither of them speaking. When they finally pulled apart, Caleb kept his hands on her waist. "I'm terrified of this." "Of what?" "This. You. How much I'm starting to need you." "Need isn't a bad thing, Caleb." "It is when you lose it." She put her hands on his face, making him look at her. "You're not going to lose me." I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere unless you push me away. I don't want to push you away. Then don't. She kissed him, gentle and deliberate, and this time it didn't feel desperate or overwhelming. It felt like a promise, like the beginning of something they were both choosing. They took it slow after that, navigating the shift from friends to something more. They didn't tell the kids yet, wanting to be sure this was real before involving them. But there were more touches, longer looks, stolen kisses when the kids weren't paying attention. Jim definitely noticed, and his knowing smile suggested he approved. The neighbors noticed too, and Caleb found himself on the receiving end of more friendly waves and casual conversations than before, like Maya's acceptance of him had granted him access to the community. 4 weeks after the hearing, Martinez called while Caleb was at work. Got news, the review board issued their decision. Caleb's heart stopped. And? They're overturning the discharge, changing it to general under honorable conditions. It's not a full honorable discharge, but it removes the dishonorable status and acknowledges that the circumstances were irregular. He had to sit down. Are you serious? Dead serious. It'll take a few weeks for the paperwork to process, but you're clear. You can use this on job applications, background checks, everything. You did it, Caleb. After hanging up, Caleb sat in the warehouse break room, shaking. 5 years. 5 years of that discharge hanging over him, defining him, limiting every opportunity. And now it was gone. Not erased completely, but changed into something he could live with. He called Maya immediately. They overturned it. She actually screamed, and he heard Emma in the background asking what was wrong. Oh my God, Caleb, that's incredible. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. Without Martinez and Jackson and everyone who helped. His voice broke. Thank you. You did the hard part. You fought for yourself. I just held the rope while you climbed. That night, they celebrated with both kids, ordering pizza and making a cake from a box mix. Noah didn't fully understand what they were celebrating, but he was happy because Caleb was happy. Emma kept clapping and saying it was the best day ever, and Maya couldn't stop smiling. After the kids went to bed, Caleb and Maya sat on his front porch with beers, watching the neighborhood settle into night. What happens now? Maya asked. Now I tell Derek and corporate, make sure the job is secure. Then I start applying for better positions, things I actually want to do, instead of just what I can get. He paused. Maybe I'll even call Jennifer, see if there's a path to more regular contact with Emma. That sounds like a good plan. And us? The question hung between them. What happens with us? Maya was quiet for a moment, her beer bottle sweating in her hands. I think we keep doing what we've been doing. Taking it day by day, being honest with each other, seeing where this goes. Unless you want something different? No. I want exactly this. He reached over and took her hand. I want you, and whatever this is, and the chance to build something real. She laced her fingers through his. Then that's what we'll do. The next day at work, Caleb gave Derek the news. His supervisor's relief was palpable. Thank God. Corporate was breathing down my neck about this. Now I can tell them to back off. He shook Caleb's hand. Congratulations. Seriously, you earned this. But the celebration was short-lived. That afternoon, Derek called Caleb back into the office, and his expression had changed from relieved to grim. Just got word from upstairs. They're restructuring, cutting staff by 15% across all facilities. Last hired, first fired. The bottom dropped out of Caleb's stomach. When? End of the month. I'm sorry, Caleb. I fought for you, but the decision came from corporate. Nothing I can do. Walking to his truck after shift, Caleb felt the old familiar weight settling back on his shoulders. The discharge was overturned, which was huge, but now he was losing the job anyway. 6 months of stability, gone. Back to uncertainty, back to scrambling, back to not knowing how he'd keep a roof over Noah's head. Maya took the news better than he did. Okay, so you find something else. You've got a clean record now, actual skills, good references. This isn't like before. What if I can't find something local? What if I have to move for work? She was quiet for a beat. Then we'll figure that out when we get there. But you're getting ahead of yourself. Start applying, see what's available. Don't catastrophize before you have actual information. He wanted to argue, to list all the ways this could go wrong, but she was right. The difference between now and 6 months ago was that he had options. He had people who believed in him. He had a chance. Over the next 2 weeks, Caleb applied for every job he could find within an hour's drive. Office manager at a construction company, logistics coordinator at a distribution center, warehouse supervisor at a manufacturing plant. Some were long shots, some seemed promising, all required patience he didn't have. He also called Jennifer and told her about the overturned discharge. "That's good," she said, and she sounded like she meant it. Emma asked if we could do another video call. Would next Saturday work? They fell into a routine of weekly calls. Emma gradually relaxed, started talking more freely, even laughed at Caleb's terrible jokes. It wasn't the relationship he'd lost, but it was something, a foundation to build on. Meanwhile, his relationship with Maya deepened in quiet ways. She stayed over one night after the kids fell asleep during a movie, and they talked until 3 in the morning about everything and nothing. He met more of her friends, got included in casual weekend gatherings, started feeling like part of the community instead of an outsider. One evening, sitting in Maya's kitchen while the kids played upstairs, she brought up something that had clearly been on her mind. "My ex-husband called yesterday." Caleb looked up from the paperwork he'd been sorting. "What did he want?" "To know if I'm seeing anyone. Apparently Emma mentioned Mr. Caleb during one of their calls, and he got curious." She smiled tightly. "I told him it was none of his business." "What did he say?" "That he hopes I'm being careful, that Emma needs stability, all the usual controlling garbage disguised as concern." She set down her coffee cup with more force than necessary. "He left because being a father was too hard. He doesn't get to have opinions about who I date now." "Are we dating?" The question came out before Caleb could stop it. Maya raised an eyebrow. "What would you call this?" "I don't know. We haven't really talked about it. We have dinner together almost every night. Our kids are best friends. We've kissed multiple times. You know my coffee order, and I know you hate mushrooms. What else would we be doing?" He couldn't help but smile. "Dating, I guess." "Exactly." She softened. "Unless you want to call it something else." "No, dating works. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page." "We are. And for the record, my ex can be as concerned as he wants. You're good for me. For Emma, too. She's never seen me this happy." The words settled warm in Caleb's chest. He was good for someone. Not a burden, not a project, but actually good for someone. 2 days before his last day at the warehouse, Caleb got a call from the construction company he'd interviewed with the week before. "Mr. Reed, this is Tom Brennan from Brennan Construction. I wanted to offer you the office manager position. Starting salary is $48,000, full benefits, 2 weeks vacation to start." Caleb had to ask him to repeat the number. 48,000 was more than he'd made at the warehouse, more than he'd made in the military, actual career-level money. "When would you need me to start?" "How's 2 weeks from Monday? Give you a little time between jobs." He accepted before he could second-guess himself, and as soon as he hung up, he called Maya. "I got it, the construction company job. Better pay, better hours, actual benefits." "Caleb, that's amazing. I knew you would." He sat in his truck in the warehouse parking lot, looking at the building where he'd spent the last several months. It hadn't been his dream job, but it had given him stability when he needed it most. Derek had taken a chance on him when nobody else would. He'd miss that. But the new job was better in every way, and for the first time in his adult life, Caleb felt like things were actually moving in the right direction. The discharge was overturned. He had a good job. His daughter was talking to him again. He had a woman who looked at him like he mattered, a son who was thriving, a community that had accepted him. 6 months ago, he'd stood in his driveway at 3 in the morning, wondering if coming here was the biggest mistake of his life. Now, sitting in the fading afternoon light with a job offer in hand and Maya waiting for him across the street, Caleb Reed finally understood what it meant to come home. It meant finding the place where you could build the life you actually wanted, not the life you thought you deserved. It meant letting people help you. It meant fighting for yourself with the same ferocity you'd fight for anyone you loved. It meant believing, finally, that you were worth the effort. The shift from warehouse work to an actual office happened faster than Caleb expected. 1 week he was loading pallets in steel-toed boots. The next he was sitting at a desk in business casual clothes, managing schedules and coordinating projects for a construction company that built everything from residential additions to commercial renovations. Tom Brennan, the owner, was a gruff man in his 60s who'd built his company from nothing and had strong opinions about everything. But he was fair, paid well, and seemed to appreciate that Caleb actually understood logistics and planning. Most office managers I've hired don't know the difference between a 2x4 and a 4x4, Tom said during Caleb's first week. You've got practical sense, I like that. The work was challenging in ways Caleb had missed. He coordinated crews, managed supply chains, handled customer communications, and solved problems that required actual thinking instead of just physical labor. His military experience translated better than he'd expected. Organization, attention to detail, the ability to stay calm when things went sideways. By the end of his second week, Tom pulled him aside after a particularly complicated day where 3 different projects had overlapping crises. You handled that well, kept your head, prioritized right, didn't panic. That's rare. Tom crossed his arms. I'm adding a performance bonus to your contract. You keep this up, there's room to grow here. Caleb went home that night feeling something he hadn't felt in years. Professional pride. He was good at this. People respected his work. He was building a career, not just collecting paychecks. Maya noticed the difference immediately. You're lighter, she said one evening while they cooked dinner together at his place. The kids were setting the table, arguing cheerfully about whose turn it was to put out napkins. What do you mean? You don't carry everything in your shoulders anymore. You smile more, you sleep better. She bumped his hip with hers. Success looks good on you. I wouldn't call it success yet. I would. You're doing work you're good at, making enough money to be comfortable, building something. That's success, Caleb. He wanted to argue, but looking around his kitchen, now fully remodeled with new cabinets he and Jim had installed, fresh paint, functioning appliances, he had to admit she had a point. This was nothing like the broken-down house he'd arrived to 7 months ago. Nothing like the broken-down man he'd been either. The Saturday video calls with his daughter Emma became the highlight of Caleb's week. She was opening up more, telling him about her friends in school and the soccer team she'd joined. Sometimes she'd show him her homework or a drawing she'd made. Small things, but they meant everything. One Saturday, Jennifer stayed on the call after Emma ran off to find something to show him. She talks about you more now, Jennifer said, her tone carefully neutral. Asks when she can visit. Caleb's heart jumped. Really? Don't get too excited. I'm not saying yes yet, but I'm not saying no either. She paused. You're different than you were. More stable. Less angry. I'm trying to be better. I can see that. And I'm glad. Emma deserves to know her father, if that father is someone who can actually show up for her. I want to show up. I've always wanted to. I just didn't know how. Well, you're figuring it out now. That counts for something. Jennifer glanced off screen. She's coming back. We'll talk more about a possible visit later, okay? After the call ended, Caleb sat at his kitchen table feeling cautiously hopeful. A visit. His daughter might actually come see him, see the life he'd built here. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. Maya found him there an hour later, staring at nothing. What's got you thinking so hard? He told her about the conversation with Jennifer, about the possibility of Emma visiting. What if she comes and hates it? What if she sees how small town this place is and thinks it's boring? What if she loves it? Maya interrupted. What if she sees that her dad has a real home, a real life, and actually wants to be part of it? You're catastrophizing again. It's a talent. She laughed and pulled him to his feet. Come on, the kids want to go to the park, and you're not sitting here spiraling. At the park, Caleb pushed Noah on the swings while Maya did the same for Emma. Other parents were scattered around, some of whom Caleb now knew by name. Sarah, whose twin boys were in Noah's class. Marcus, who worked at the hardware store and always had advice about house projects. Linda, who ran the local bakery and made Noah's favorite cookies. He'd become part of the fabric of this place without quite realizing it. People waved when they saw him, asked how the new job was going, included him in casual conversations about upcoming town events. He belonged here in a way he'd never belonged anywhere. Daddy, watch this, Noah called from the top of the slide. He went down backward, laughing the whole way, and Caleb's chest tightened with the familiar ache of love mixed with fear. This child trusted him completely, depended on him, and Caleb was so terrified of letting him down. He's happy, Maya said quietly, coming to stand beside him. You've given him that. A stable home, a normal childhood, the freedom to just be a kid. I'm trying. You're succeeding. She took his hand right there in front of everyone, and Caleb realized she was done hiding whatever they were. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. Sometimes things just work out. That night, after both kids were in bed at their respective houses, Maya came back over. They'd fallen into a pattern of these late-night conversations, sitting on his porch or at the kitchen table, talking about everything and nothing. I need to tell you something, Maya said, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. Caleb's stomach dropped. Okay. Emma's father called again. He wants to take her for a month this summer. That's good, isn't it? She should spend time with him. Normally, yes, but he's never asked for more than a weekend before. A month is a long time, and I don't trust his motivation. She set down her mug. He's getting remarried. I think he wants to show Emma off, play happy family for his fiancée. What did you tell him? That I'd think about it, which I have been, constantly. Because on one hand, Emma deserves to know her father and he has a right to see her. But on the other hand, he's let her down so many times, and I don't want her hurt again. Caleb understood that fear intimately. What does Emma want? She's excited about it. She barely remembers him, so to her it's this fun adventure. She doesn't understand that he might promise the world and deliver nothing. Or he might actually follow through. People can change, Maya. You've seen it happen. She looked at him meaningfully. I have, but change requires consistent effort, not grand gestures. He's all gestures. Then tell him she can go for 2 weeks instead of a month. Shorter time frame, less chance for disappointment, and if it goes well, he can build up to longer visits. Maya considered this. That's actually a good compromise. 2 weeks I can live with. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and Caleb found himself thinking about how natural this felt. Talking through parenting decisions together, being each other's sounding board. The casual intimacy of shared space and shared lives. I should probably go home, Maya said eventually, but she didn't move. You could stay. The words came out before he could second-guess them. Caleb, not like that. I mean, unless you want... He stopped, took a breath. I just meant you don't have to go. We could watch a movie or just talk more. Whatever you want. She smiled, soft and a little uncertain. I'd like that. They ended up on the couch, watching a terrible action movie, Maya's head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. It was innocent and comfortable, and somehow more intimate than anything Caleb had experienced in years. This was what partnership looked like, choosing to be together even when you didn't have to be, finding peace in another person's presence. Maya fell asleep halfway through the movie, and Caleb just held her, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the steady rhythm of her breathing. When the credits rolled, he gently woke her. I should get back, she murmured, still half asleep. Emma might wake up. I'll walk you across the street. It's 30 feet. I'll still walk you. On her porch, Maya turned to face him. Thank you for tonight. For listening, for the advice, for just being here. Always. She kissed him, slow and sweet, and Caleb felt something click into place. This was real. They were building something real, and he needed to stop waiting for it to fall apart. Maya, he said when they broke apart, I'm falling for you. Actually falling, and it scares the hell out of me, but I wanted you to know. Her eyes were bright in the porch light. Good, because I fell for you months ago, and it's been lonely waiting for you to catch up. The next few weeks passed in a blur of work and domesticity. Caleb settled into his job, exceeding Tom's expectations consistently enough that he got promoted to senior office manager with another pay increase. Noah finished kindergarten with glowing reports from his teacher about his progress and social development. Emma went to stay with her father for 2 weeks, and Maya handled the separation better than expected, though Caleb could see the worry in her eyes. She'll be fine, he assured her on the 3rd day of Emma's absence. They were having dinner alone, just the two of them, which was rare and slightly strange after months of kid-filled meals. I know, logically I know, But she's my baby, and she's with someone who's let her down before. Then she'll learn that people aren't perfect. That's not the worst lesson. When did you get so wise? When I started listening to you. She laughed, and the tension eased slightly. They finished dinner and cleaned up together, and Caleb realized this was what he wanted long term. Not just the big moments, but the ordinary ones. Doing dishes, talking about their days, the comfortable silence of two people who knew each other well. What are you thinking about? Maya asked, catching him staring. Us. This. How normal it feels. Is that good or bad? Good. Definitely good. He dried his hands on the towel. I was thinking maybe we should tell the kids. Make this official. You think they don't already know? Noah asked me last week if you were my boyfriend. Emma asked if you were going to be her new daddy. Caleb's eyes widened. What did you tell them? I said we were very good friends who cared about each other a lot, and that grown-up relationships were complicated. Emma seemed satisfied with that answer. Noah said that meant yes, but adults don't like to admit things. Smart kid. He gets it from you. They sat on the couch, and Caleb pulled Maya close. So should we have an actual conversation with them? Make it clear that we're together and what that means? When Emma gets back, yes. I think they deserve honesty, and I'm tired of tiptoeing around this. Me too. That Saturday, Caleb had his usual video call with his daughter Emma in California. She was full of stories about Disneyland and the beach and her father's big house with a pool. She seemed happy, which was both wonderful and slightly painful. Do you like it there? He asked carefully. It's fun, but I miss home. And you? She moved closer to the screen. Daddy, when can I come visit you? Would you want to? Yes. Mom says you have a big backyard and a real house now. Can I see it? Caleb turned his laptop around, giving her a video tour of the house. She oohed over the backyard, asked questions about Noah's toys she could see in the corner, wanted to know if there was a park nearby. This looks nice, she said when he turned the camera back to himself. Can I really visit? I'd love that, sweetheart. Let me talk to your mom, okay? We'll figure something out. After the call, he immediately texted Jennifer. Emma asked about visiting. I meant what I said. I'd love to have her here. Whatever works for you both. Her response came 20 minutes later. Let me think about it. She's doing well right now, and I don't want to disrupt that. But maybe in a few months, once school starts and she's settled again. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Progress. Emma came home from her father's trip sunburned and exhausted, but genuinely happy. Maya's relief was palpable when she hugged her daughter at the door. Did you have fun? So much fun. Daddy and Rachel, that's his fiancée, took me everywhere. We went to the beach and Disneyland and this huge mall, and Rachel is really nice. She let me help her make cookies. Maya's smile tightened slightly, but she kept her voice warm. That sounds wonderful, honey. I'm so glad you had a good time. Later, after Emma was in bed, Maya came over and collapsed on Caleb's couch. She had a great time, which is good. Exactly what I wanted. So why do I feel terrible? Because she's your daughter and someone else made her happy. That's hard, even when it's the right thing. He's never been consistent before. What if this was just for show? What if he goes back to forgetting she exists and she's disappointed again? Then you'll be there to help her through it, the way you always have been. But maybe he really is trying to be better. People do that sometimes. Maya leaned her head on his shoulder. I hate that you're right. Get used to it. I'm right a lot these days. She elbowed him gently, and they sat in comfortable silence until she spoke again. We should tell them, tomorrow, both kids together. Caleb's heart rate picked up. You sure? I'm sure. They're going to figure it out completely on their own if we wait much longer, and I'd rather we control the narrative. The next day, they gathered both kids at Caleb's house and sat them down at the kitchen table. Noah and Emma looked curious but not particularly worried, which was probably a good sign. So, Maya started, then looked at Caleb for support. He took her hand on top of the table, a deliberate gesture. We wanted to talk to you both about something important. Maya and I have become very close over the past few months, more than just friends. And we wanted you to know that we're in a relationship, that we care about each other. Emma's face lit up immediately. Does that mean you're boyfriend and girlfriend? Yes, Maya said, smiling. Noah looked between them seriously. Are you getting married? Not right now, Caleb said quickly, but we are together, and that means we'll probably spend even more time together as a family. All four of us. That's fine, Noah said with a shrug. You already act like you're together anyway. Adults are weird about obvious things. Emma bounced in her seat. Can we have sleepovers now? Like all of us in one house sometimes? Maya and Caleb exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed logistics that far. We'll figure that out as we go, Maya said diplomatically. But yes, probably sometimes. The conversation continued for a while, both kids asking questions that ranged from practical to absurd. Would they celebrate holidays together? Could Emma call Caleb something other than Mr. Caleb? What about birthdays? If they got married someday, would Noah and Emma be siblings? By the end, both kids seemed satisfied and ran off to play, leaving the adults somewhat shell-shocked. That went better than expected, Caleb said. They took it completely in stride, like we were the weird ones for making it complicated. Kids usually see things more clearly than adults. Maya turned to him, serious now. Emma asked if you'd be her new daddy someday. Are you okay with that possibility? Caleb's throat tightened. Yeah, I am. I mean, she has a father, and I'd never try to replace him, but being someone she can count on, someone who's there for her. I want that. Good, because she already sees you that way, whether we label it or not. That night, for the first time, they had a real family dinner, all four of them at Caleb's table, cooking together, eating together, cleaning up together. It felt right in a way that made Caleb's chest ache with hope and fear in equal measure. After the kids were in bed, Maya stayed. They sat on the porch watching the sun set, her hand in his, and Caleb felt the last of his walls crumbling. I love you, he said quietly. I've been trying not to say it because it felt too fast, but I do. I love you. Maya turned to face him, her eyes shining. I love you too. Have for a while now. Why didn't you say anything? Because you needed to get here on your own. You needed to believe you deserved this before you could accept it. She was right, as usual. 6 months ago, if someone had told Caleb he'd have a good job, a restored house, a relationship with his daughter, and a woman who loved him, he wouldn't have believed it. He would have insisted it was impossible, that people like him didn't get second chances. But sitting here with Maya, looking at the life they'd built together, Caleb finally understood that second chances weren't something you were given. They were something you created. Through showing up every day. Through doing the work, accepting help, believing you were worth the effort. What are you thinking about now? Maya asked. How grateful I am. For you, for this town, for everyone who helped me when I didn't know how to help myself. You did the hard part, Caleb. You showed up. You tried. The rest of us just held the rope. He kissed her then, deep and slow and full of every emotion he'd been holding back. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Maya smiled. Come on, let's go inside. I want to fall asleep next to you without having to sneak back across the street at midnight. The kids are asleep in their own rooms and will be fine. We're allowed to be together, Caleb. We're allowed to be happy. They went inside, and for the first time since returning to this town, Caleb let himself believe that maybe, finally, he was home. Not because of the house or the job or even the town itself, but because of the people who'd chosen to be part of his life, who'd seen him at his worst and decided he was worth investing in. The next morning, he woke up with Maya in his arms and the sound of kids giggling in the hallway. Life wasn't perfect. It never would be. There would be challenges ahead, complications with exes and jobs and all the normal chaos of blended family life. But lying there in the soft morning light, listening to the sounds of his life happening around him, Caleb Reed felt something he hadn't felt in longer than he could remember. He felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The morning after their first night together as an acknowledged couple, Caleb woke to the smell of pancakes and the sound of children's laughter. He found Maya in his kitchen, flour on her cheek, while Noah and Emma took turns pouring batter onto the griddle with varying degrees of success. Morning, sleepyhead, Maya said, smiling at him over her shoulder. We're making breakfast. I can see that. He kissed her temple, then ruffled both kids' hair. This is nice. It is, she agreed. Get used to it. Over breakfast, the kids chattered about their plans for the day, something involving a fort in the backyard and elaborate rules only they understood. Caleb and Maya exchanged glances, both thinking the same thing. This was what normal looked like, what family looked like. Later, after the kids ran outside, Caleb's phone rang. Jennifer. "Hey," he answered, stepping into the living room. "Hi. So, I've been thinking about Emma visiting. She hasn't stopped talking about it since your call. Would 3 weeks from now work? A long weekend, Friday through Monday?" Caleb's heart jumped. That would be perfect. Absolutely perfect. "I'll email you the flight details once I book them. And Caleb, don't make me regret this. She's excited, and if you let her down, I won't. I promise. Thank you, Jennifer. Really." After hanging up, he stood there for a moment, processing. His daughter was coming here, to see him, to see his life, to maybe understand that he'd actually managed to get his act together. Maya found him staring at nothing. "Good news or bad news, face?" "Good news. Emma's coming to visit in 3 weeks. "That's wonderful. Why do you look terrified?" "Because what if she gets here and realizes I'm still just figuring everything out? What if the house isn't good enough, or this town is too boring, or she sees through all of it and knows I'm faking half the time?" Maya took his face in her hands. "You're not faking anything. You've built a real life here, a good life, and your daughter's going to see that. Stop catastrophizing." "It's becoming a pattern, isn't it? A pattern we're going to break." She kissed him. "Now come outside. The kids want you to help with their fort, and I need coffee." The next 3 weeks passed in a flurry of preparation. Caleb cleaned the house top to bottom, bought new sheets for the guest room, stocked the pantry with kid-friendly food, and generally drove himself slightly crazy trying to make everything perfect. Tom noticed his distraction at work. "You've checked that shipment manifest 3 times. What's going on?" "My daughter's coming to visit this weekend, first time in 2 years. Tom nodded slowly. "That's big. You nervous?" "Terrified." "Don't be. Kids are resilient. They just want to know you care. Everything else is details." He paused. "Take Friday off. Give yourself time to get ready. I can't just..." "You can, and you will. You've earned it. Besides, you've been putting in extra hours for weeks. Consider it comp time." Caleb accepted gratefully, and Friday morning found him at the airport 2 hours early, pacing near the baggage claim. Maya had offered to come with him, but he'd wanted to do this alone. First impressions mattered. When Emma finally appeared, walking confidently through the terminal with her backpack and a flight attendant escort, Caleb's breath caught. She was so much taller than he remembered, more sure of herself, growing up in ways he'd missed. "Daddy!" She ran to him, and he caught her in a hug that lasted several long moments. "Hey, sweetheart, I'm so glad you're here. This airport is small. Ours in California is huge." He laughed. "Everything's smaller here, but I think you'll like it anyway." On the drive back, Emma peppered him with questions about the town, about Noah, about the house. She seemed genuinely excited, which eased some of Caleb's anxiety. "Is your girlfriend going to be there?" she asked as they pulled onto his street. Caleb glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Maya?" "Yeah, she and her daughter Emma, your namesake kind of, live across the street. They'll probably come over later if that's okay with you." "Mom said you have a girlfriend now. She said it's good because you seem happier." "Your mom said that?" "Yeah. She said people deserve second chances if they're really trying." The words hit Caleb harder than they should have. Jennifer had every reason to be bitter, to want him to fail. Instead, she was giving him grace. He'd have to thank her for that. Noah was waiting on the porch when they pulled up, bouncing with excitement. Emma climbed out of the truck, and the 2 kids sized each other up for approximately 3 seconds before Noah blurted out, "Want to see my room? I have Legos." They disappeared inside, leaving Caleb to grab Emma's suitcase and follow at a more sedate pace. Maya appeared from her house, crossing the street with a smile. "She's beautiful," Maya said, watching through the window as the kids dumped out a bin of Legos. "She is, and terrifyingly grown up. That's what kids do. They grow." She took his hand. "How are you holding up?" "Ask me in 3 days." That evening, they had dinner at Caleb's house, both Emma's, Noah, Maya, Jim, and even Jackson, who'd driven down to finally meet the family Caleb had told him about during their phone calls. It was chaotic and loud and exactly what Caleb had never thought he'd have. His daughter fit in seamlessly, chattering with the other Emma about school and friends, listening to Noah's elaborate explanations of his Lego creations, asking Jim about his work and Jackson about the military. She was confident and curious and completely at ease. After the kids went to bed, Noah and both Emmas crammed into Noah's room for an impromptu sleepover. The adults sat on the porch with beers. "You did good, man," Jackson said. "The kid's great, the house is solid, you've got people around you. This is what success looks like." "Doesn't feel like success most days." "That's because you're living it. From the outside, it's obvious." Jackson stood to leave, shaking Caleb's hand. "I'm proud of you. For fighting for the discharge, for building this, for not giving up. That matters." After he left, Jim followed suit, citing an early morning. Maya stayed, her hand in Caleb's, both of them watching the quiet street. "Your daughter likes it here," she observed. "She's being polite." "No, she's being genuine. I watched her, Caleb. She's happy, relaxed. She feels safe with you." "How can you tell?" "Because I know what kids look like when they're performing versus when they're actually comfortable. She's comfortable." The weekend flew by. Caleb took Emma to the park, showed her around downtown, let her help make breakfast and pick movies, and generally just be present in his life. They had their video calls with Jennifer each evening, and Emma gushed about everything she'd done. On Sunday, Maya invited everyone over for a barbecue. Neighbors showed up. Sarah with her twins, Marcus from the hardware store, Linda from the bakery. The backyard filled with people and conversation and the smell of grilling food. Caleb found himself standing on the edge of it all, watching his daughter play with the other kids, watching Maya move through the crowd with easy grace, watching this community that had somehow become his. "You look contemplative," Tom said, appearing beside him with a plate of food. "Just thinking about how different this is from a year ago." "Different how?" "A year ago, I was living in a motel, barely scraping by, convinced I'd screwed up my life beyond repair. Now I'm here with all this." He gestured at the scene before them. "Sometimes I still can't believe it's real." "It's real because you made it real. You put in the work, accepted help when it was offered, and built something worth having. That's not luck, Caleb. That's character." That night, after everyone left and the kids were asleep, Emma came downstairs to find Caleb sitting at the kitchen table. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Too excited. This weekend was really fun, Daddy." "I'm glad, sweetheart. I've loved having you here." She sat across from him, suddenly serious. "Mom said you had a hard time for a while, that you made mistakes, but you're trying to fix them." Caleb chose his words carefully. "That's true. I wasn't a very good dad to you when you were little. I was angry and stressed and not around much. I'm sorry for that. But you're different now. I'm trying to be. Every day." Emma was quiet for a moment, picking at the edge of a placemat. "I like it here. I like Noah and the other Emma and Miss Maya. I like your house and this town. Can I come back?" "Anytime your mom says it's okay, absolutely yes." "What if I wanted to stay longer? Like for part of the summer?" Caleb's heart jumped, but he kept his voice steady. "We'd have to talk to your mom about that. But I would love it. I'd love to have you here as much as possible." "Okay, I'm going to ask her." She stood and hugged him goodnight. "I love you, Daddy." "I love you too, sweetheart. So much." After she went back upstairs, Caleb sat alone in the kitchen and let himself cry. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of knowing his daughter still loved him, still wanted him in her life. After everything he'd done wrong, he was getting another chance. Monday morning came too fast. At the airport, Emma hugged him tight and made him promise to call more often, to send pictures of Noah and the house, to let her know when she could visit again. "I'll miss you," she said. "I'll miss you too. But we'll talk every week, okay? And maybe you can come back this summer." "I'm definitely asking Mom." Watching her walk through security, turning back to wave one last time, Caleb felt the bittersweet ache of love and loss tangled together. But underneath it was something stronger. Hope. His relationship with Emma wasn't perfect, wasn't what it could have been if he'd made better choices years ago, but it was real and growing, and that was enough. Maya was waiting when he got home, and he fell into her arms without saying anything. She just held him, understanding without needing explanation. She wants to come back this summer, he said eventually. Maybe for a few weeks. That's wonderful. What if Jennifer says no? What if this was just a trial run and she decides it's too disruptive? Then you'll deal with that if it happens. But Caleb, I saw Jennifer's texts. I saw how she talked about you being different, being better. She's not going to take this away from Emma just because she can. 2 days later, Jennifer called. Emma hasn't stopped talking about the visit. She wants to come back for 3 weeks this summer. I'd love that. Whatever works for you both. Jennifer was quiet for a moment. You're really doing okay, aren't you? This isn't just an act? It's not an act. I'm actually okay. For the first time in years, I'm actually okay. Good. Emma deserves that. And honestly, so do you. She paused. I was really angry at you for a long time, Caleb. For the choices you made, for leaving me to handle everything alone. But watching you with Emma this weekend, seeing the life you've built, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just glad you figured it out. Thank you for giving me this chance. Don't make me regret it. I won't. I promise. Spring turned into summer, and life settled into comfortable patterns. Caleb excelled at work, earning Tom's trust to the point where he was managing entire projects independently. Noah finished first grade with excellent marks and a certificate for being the most helpful classmate. Maya's design business picked up, bringing in steady income and creative fulfillment. They navigated the complexities of blending their lives, whose house to have dinner at, how to handle discipline across 2 households, what traditions to keep, and what new ones to create. It wasn't always smooth, but they talked through conflicts and made decisions together, and slowly became a cohesive unit. In late June, Emma arrived for her 3-week stay. This time, she brought more luggage and a clear expectation that she belonged here. She and Noah bickered like siblings within days, and she started calling Maya's daughter my sister Emma without prompting. One evening, while the 3 kids played in the backyard, Maya and Caleb sat on his porch watching them. I've been thinking, Maya said carefully, about our living situation. Caleb's stomach tightened. Okay. We're basically living together already. The kids are always at both houses. We have clothes and toothbrushes everywhere. We're splitting groceries and bills. It's inefficient. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we actually move in together. Officially. Either you and Noah move in with us or we move in here. Combine households. Stop pretending we're maintaining separate lives. Caleb's mind raced. It made sense practically, but it also felt huge. That's a big step. We've already taken it, Caleb. We're just making it official. She turned to face him. Unless you're not ready, I'm not trying to push you into anything. I'm not ready. I'm just... He searched for the right words. Scared. What if we screw this up? What if living together full-time is different and we can't handle it? Then we'll figure it out, the same way we figured out everything else. Together. She took his hand. I love you. I want to build a life with you. Not just date you or coexist nearby, but actually build something permanent. Don't you want that too? More than anything. Then let's do it. They decided to move into Caleb's house since it was larger and already had 3 bedrooms. Over the next month, they slowly combined their belongings, painted what would become the girls' room in colors they both chose, and navigated the logistics of truly merging their lives. The kids adapted faster than the adults. They were thrilled to be in the same house all the time, to not have to coordinate sleepovers or decide whose house to be at. For them, this was simply how things were supposed to be. On the day Maya officially moved in, Jim came over to help carry furniture. He found Caleb standing in the newly arranged living room, looking slightly shell-shocked. Big day, Jim observed. Yeah, really big. Having second thoughts? No, just first, second, and third realizations of how much my life has changed. Jim clapped him on the shoulder. Change for the better, son. Don't forget that. That night, after the kids were asleep and the chaos had settled, Caleb and Maya stood in their bedroom, their actual shared bedroom now, and took stock of what they'd created. We did it, Maya said. We're actually doing this. We are. He pulled her close. Thank you for not giving up on me, for showing up even when I didn't know how to ask for help. Thank you for letting me in, for being brave enough to build this with me. They stood there holding each other, and Caleb felt something he'd been chasing his whole life without knowing it. Home. Not the house, though he loved what they'd created here. Not the town, though he'd found community he'd never expected. But this woman in his arms, these children asleep down the hall, this life they were building together through conscious choice and daily effort. Late summer brought Caleb's 31st birthday. Maya planned a party in the backyard with all their friends and neighbors. Tom and his wife came, bringing a gift certificate to a local restaurant. Jackson drove down again, this time with his own family. Jennifer even sent a card with a note that made Caleb's eyes sting. Happy birthday. Emma says to tell you she's proud of you. So am I. As the sun set and the party wound down, Caleb found himself standing in the same spot where he'd stood a year ago, overwhelmed and uncertain. So much had changed. The house was fully restored now, filled with laughter and life. The yard had a new deck and a swing set the kids used constantly. The future that had seemed impossible was now his daily reality. What are you thinking about? Maya asked, wrapping her arms around him from behind. How far I've come. How impossible this all seemed a year ago. And now? Now it just seems like life, my life, our life. She turned him around to face her. I have something to tell you, and you can't freak out. His heart jumped. That's not a reassuring start. I'm pregnant. The world stopped. Caleb stared at her, processing the words. We're about 8 weeks. I found out yesterday, but wanted to tell you on your birthday. She searched his face anxiously. Say something. He kissed her, deep and urgent, and when they broke apart, he was laughing. We're having a baby. We're having a baby. Are you okay with this? I know we didn't plan it, and we haven't even talked about marriage or... Maya, stop. I'm more than okay. He couldn't find adequate words. This is the best birthday present I've ever gotten. They told the kids the next morning over breakfast. All three reacted with varying degrees of excitement and confusion about logistics, but overall enthusiasm won out. Noah wanted to know if it would be a brother or sister. Emma wanted to help pick names. The other Emma wanted to know if the baby would sleep in her room. We'll figure all that out, Maya assured them. Right now, we're just excited and happy. Over the following months, they prepared for the baby while navigating school starting, work demands, and the general chaos of a household with 3 kids about to become 4. Caleb proposed in October, simple and direct on their porch one evening. I want to marry you, not because of the baby, but because I want to spend my life with you. Build our family together officially. Be your partner in everything. Will you marry me? Maya said yes before he finished the question. They got married in November at the courthouse with just the kids and Jim present. No big ceremony, no fuss, just the legal commitment they both wanted. Maya wore a simple dress, Caleb wore the nicest suit he owned, and all 3 kids served as witnesses. Afterward, they had dinner at home with close friends. Nothing fancy, just the people who'd been there through everything. Tom gave a toast about second chances and earned happiness. Jim cried quietly in the corner. The kids stole cake before the official cutting. It was perfect in its imperfection. Emma arrived in December, a daughter with Maya's eyes and Caleb's stubborn chin. The older kids were fascinated and slightly terrified of her, taking turns holding her while supervised and arguing over whose turn it was to help with bottles. In the hospital room, holding his newborn daughter while his wife slept and his blended family crowded around, Caleb felt the last piece click into place. This was it. This was what he'd been fighting for without fully understanding what it looked like. Not perfection, not redemption for past mistakes or validation of his worth. Just this, a normal life, built through consistent effort and the help of people who'd chosen to believe in him. 1 year after marrying Maya, 18 months after returning to his hometown broken and certain he'd made a mistake, Caleb stood in his backyard at Noah's 7th birthday party. The yard was full of kids and parents, food and laughter and the comfortable chaos of community. Maya was nearby with baby Emma, talking to Sarah about something. Jim was manning the grill with Tom, both of them arguing cheerfully about the right way to cook burgers. His daughter Emma was there too, staying for the whole summer this time, running around with Noah and her sister and their friends. Jackson caught Caleb's eye from across the yard and raised his beer in salute. Caleb returned the gesture, then looked around at everything he'd built. This was home. Not the place, though he loved this town now in ways he'd never expected. Not the house, though he was proud of what he'd created here. But the people, the relationships, the daily choice to show up and be present and build something lasting. He'd come here thinking he was returning to a place. Instead, he discovered that home was something you created through persistence and vulnerability and the courage to accept help when it was offered. Maya appeared at his side, baby Emma on her hip. "What's that look?" "Just grateful. For all of this. For you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "You built this, you know, all of it. We just helped. I couldn't have done it alone." "No," she agreed, "but you didn't have to. That's what you finally figured out. You don't have to rebuild alone. You never did." Caleb kissed her temple, then his daughter's head, and watched his son blow out candles surrounded by friends. His phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Emma says the party looks fun. Thanks for including her in everything. You're a good father, Caleb." A good father, a good husband, a good man. For the first time in his life, Caleb Reed believed it might actually be true. Not because he'd achieved perfection or earned redemption, but because he'd learned that being good enough, showing up, trying, accepting help, and building something real was actually more than enough. It was everything. As the sun set over his backyard full of family and friends, over the house he'd rebuilt and the life he'd created, Caleb understood the truth he'd spent 31 years searching for. Home wasn't where you came from. It wasn't even where you came back to. Home was what you chose to build, every single day, with the people who chose to build it with you. And finally, after years of running and fighting and failing, Caleb Reed was home.